And with that being said, we're going to transition to our weekly recap and review of the Prime Video original series, The Boys, episode 7 of season 4. The penultimate episode is just premiered. It's entitled The Insider. And we've obviously been recapping the series on a weekly basis. And all of a sudden, just that quickly, we are pretty much at the end of the season. A lot of things are being solved and dealt with. There's obviously still some looming questions and things that have to be ultimately contended with in the season finale. But we're going to dive into spoilers, talk about the big moments of this episode. But before we do all of that, we're going to just start off with our big picture thoughts about the latest episode of The Boys. And so what did you think about this brand new edition, the penultimate episode of The Boys season 4?
Wow. I cannot believe it was the penultimate episode, just because everything is happening so fast. Not necessarily in the show, but wow, we've been through 7 episodes already. It's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. But I do still wish we were getting 10 episodes. That just always feels good to me. 10 episodes feels right to me. But overall, man, I still like it. This is a decent episode. I think they're slowly piecing things together that are, and you kind of actually spoke to this at some point in an earlier review, but I think you were just saying how, like, we got to remember this is also a penultimate season, and there are things that they're trying to, I think, kind of put together in this season that are not really going to come to fruition until season 5. Like, this is definitely like all right, this is still all very dark. This is still all very, what the hell is going on? And all of this stuff will again begin to come to light and come together by that 5th season, man. But still enjoying myself. It's still it was an episode, I think, that had maybe not as much to say as the last one, but it sure was a hell of a lot more to do in this episode. I mean, there's some weird stuff in this episode, but I liked it. I was like, whoa, this is weird, but it makes so much sense. And I love I love the action in this episode. I thought it was really cool and really well done, man. So yeah, I'm glad to see the action in this episode, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next episode. I thought it was a really solid episode, I think, to tie together again what all the political things happening in episode 6 and probably all the shit that's about to go down in episode 8. So yeah, I'm still here for it, man. It was a good episode to me.
Yeah, I have to agree. I thought it was a solid episode. Probably not the highest of highs that you can reach with the penultimate episode that I would have liked. I mean, I think about the season 3 penultimate episode, which was just
crazy,
jaw-dropping, and the reveal at the end of that, we found out that Soldier Boy was Homelander's father. I mean, it's really, really hard to top that stuff because I just did not see that coming at all. And this one doesn't reach that same level of high, but what I do like about this week's episode is the fact that similar to the episode in which we were at the mansion, the Tech Night episode, which I think was last week's episode, they found a really good way to just kind of focus in on the characters and leave some of the shocking, vile shit at the door. Don't get me wrong, there's still a couple of moments here where it's like, that's so gross and I did not want to see that. But I think for the most part, we are focusing a little bit more on character. And I think the particular strength of this episode is when we can get most of these characters of this ensemble in rooms together. I'm not always sure if the side missions and the side stories work to the degree in which I want them to. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That's just kind of the nature of having a really large cast and you're trying to give everybody as much screen time as possible. But when we can really bring all of this stuff together and create these nexus points where stuff starts to converge and people are meeting up and the storylines, sort of reach their natural conclusions or their continuations, it's pretty good stuff here. And I think ultimately, if the season had focused a little bit more on that, it would probably be more of a successful season to me, because this season entirely has been a little bit lackluster in some regards. It's not terrible by any means. There's always a baseline expectation and a baseline level of quality with the boys, but I do think it's probably my least favorite of all of them thus far, just to be quite honest. But I think if we maybe focused on some of these more character beats together, in totality, it might have worked out a little bit better. But be that as it may, it was still a fine episode. Some shocking stuff that did occur, some great action also in it as well that I really appreciated and really liked. And so, yeah, it certainly, I think, set up things for what is going to be probably an explosive finale come next week. But before we do that, we're going to talk about this week's episode in full spoiler detail. So if you've not seen episode 7 of season 4 of The Boys, this is your official spoiler warning. Go duck out, watch that episode, and come back and finish out the rest of the conversation. And I first want to start off with Ryan and Homelander in this episode, because Ryan, who is obviously a really important character that's had a lot happen with him this season, has been sort of developing this new relationship with Homelander, who has become this father, to him, although they weren't, together in their early stages of life, and Ryan pretty much grew up without him. Homelander is finding his way back to him and really shaping him in his influence. And we see that Ryan is filming this Mr. Rogers style children's Christmas special. It's called the Avenue V. It looks really goofy. There's puppets, all sorts of weird stuff that's happening, but he has now become very much a fixture in the full vault marketing machine. They are trying to prop this young soup up to be the next generation, essentially. They have found, I think, the golden goose who's going to eventually surpass Homelander one day. But as they're filming this commercial, we can just tell Ryan he's not feeling it. And before long, he essentially interjects. He cuts off pretty much the entire show. He's like, you know what? No, I can't continue with this. And he looks directly at the camera, speaking to the audience that's watching, because something about, the way that they spoke on family triggered him. It triggered an emotion with him. And he said, your family isn't your enemy. Your family is all you've got. And I've been thinking about my mom lately, and she died, but she also loved Christmas. So he's in a very vulnerable state, thinking about his mom and what she taught him, and also just about the place that he's in now. And I think that certainly pissed Homelander all the way off. We can clearly see he's not liking where this is going, because he wants Ryan to be like him. So what did you make about just like the turn that Ryan took, especially in comparison to where we most recently saw him, where it kind of felt like maybe he was leaning into the more Homelander aspects of who he is, the more manipulative, the more controlling and violent aspects of who he is, as opposed to leaning towards, I think, who his mother sort of raised him to be up until this point.
Yeah, Homelander is approaching this fatherhood thing from a manipulative standpoint. And I think this is one of those moments where it came back to bite him in the butt. We've seen a couple episodes ago where Homelander was like, just do it your way. Like, tell them how you feel. Tell them the truth. And I think it worked for him at first, right? When we come to the situation with the producer and, and him smacking him multiple times. I think that was one thing that went Homelander's way, but now Ryan feels another way. He's on this show. He's not having it. And guess what? Homelander told him, do what he feels. And here he is doing exactly that. I think this is just, manipulative fatherhood gone wrong kind of for Homelander. Doing what you want, telling the kid to do what you want and say what you want is going to come back to bite you in the butt when I think moral compass is a teeter-totter right now. There's going to be some moments where he's with Homelander. He's like, well, that's pretty dark. That's crazy. But then it's not like Butcher's not gone yet. He's still kind of in his ear. His mom literally raised him up until this point. He's going to have also the other side of in goodness in him about the morality and what his mom taught him. And I think this is one of those moments where that teeter-totter leaned in that direction, man. And it made, I think, a ton of sense in that moment that he was not with this. He was like, no, none of this is right. I love Christmas. This is ridiculous. What are we talking about? And I do, you brought up Mr. Rogers. This actually reminds me of a Chappelle Show, Sesame Street episode. Oh my God. That's what I was thinking of. I was like, this is so Chappelle Show. But yeah, man, I think this is just another example of like, Ryan is not all the way off yet. He's not all the way Homelander yet. And Butcher responds to that. Butcher's like, you know what I'm saying? He's like, yeah, that's my boy kind of type shit. Like, good job. And so I think our boy Ryan, man, he still could come to the bright side at any time, but nothing is for sure yet.
It's classic teenager shit. He's unsure. He's indecisive. He's trying to determine what his future is going to be. Like, all teens go through this. Like, you don't know anything at that age. You don't know what you want. You don't know who you're going to be. And he's impressionable, of course. So when he's around Homelander and he sees him act a certain type of way and it feels good, he's going to probably lean into doing that. But when he can be away from Homelander, which is really telling because he doesn't have Homelander near him in his proximity to whisper in his ear, to feed his ego, to feed those maybe worse inhibitions about himself. He's actually thinking alone for himself in this moment. He comes to this realization on his own. And that's really telling, I think, of who he is deep down. Like, he's not really with any of this shit. And even in those moments where we've seen him act a little morally gray and do some things that it's like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing that, kid. But he's always seemed unsure about it. He's never just fully leaned into being this sinister, evil, young teenager Homelander soup in the making. Like, it's never been that. And so it'll be interesting to see what Homelander tries to do, I think, to win back those manipulative efforts that he's pretty much been responsible for this entire season. He's going to have to craft something pretty strong to make Ryan, I think, ultimately sway in his direction once again. And certainly they'll lean into that. But if it does not work out, what that means for Homelander is going to be it's going to be pretty dangerous, because that'll just set him off in a new way on top of all of the things that have already made him angry this season, which it's been plenty of shit so far. We should talk about MM and the boys and the leadership. You know, the top of this episode, we see that Butcher comes back to the fold once again, and the boys are hesitant, and he reveals essentially that he kidnapped Dr. Samir Shaw, cut off his leg basically to create a new soup virus. But he's like, we got a problem, because if he makes it strong enough and it goes airborne, then everybody dies, including you, Kimiko, and Starlight, all the people that I care about. Like, we can't go that route. This entire time we see Kessler, sort of talking in his ear, like, no, you do want this blood. You do want it to be mass genocide. Mm. But then ultimately MM decides that he's going to cede control back to Butcher of the boys. He's just going to allow him to lead from now on, because he's still reeling from that panic attack he had last week. He's thinking about his health. Like, I probably almost died, and I can't lead you all effectively. And in addition to that, he actually goes back home to Monique and Janine, and he's warning them, like, you guys got to go, you got to run, you got to get away. And Monique is like, come with us. Like, leave this shit behind. You don't need this anymore. Like, your health is really, really important. And now I want you here. I want you to be a father to Janine. I want you to be back in my life. And we see MM like really contemplate doing that in this episode. And this all happens at the same time with A-Train also dealing with a very similar issue on his side about leaving and trying to get away from this lifestyle. But what did you make of MM and his developments, and just the fact that he was very nearly close to actually making that choice to leave away with Monique and Janine, but we see by the end of this episode, he just can't allow himself to be separated from the boys before finishing out the mission.
Yeah, it's such a difficult situation, because him being with, Monique and Janine is all he has ever wanted. For a while, there was, what's his name, Todd? For a while, Todd was in the way, and he was like, dang, well, I guess all I can do at this moment is be a father to my daughter. I don't get Monique. But then she presents an opportunity for him to have both in this moment. After he had a heart attack, he's kind of course, mentally and physically exhausted. Of course, he wants to be done with all this shit. So, of course, when she opens the opportunity for that to happen, he's like, yeah, maybe I should go do that thing. Maybe we should just dip out of here and go live the rest of our days somewhere else in kind of in hiding. But I can also see, it's so interesting that A-Train is the one who brought him out of the other side of this, though. But A-Train also makes a good point of, like, this is Vought we're talking about. MM, you have done so much against this company. Homelander knows exactly who you are. They can find you anywhere you go. You don't think that's going to follow you to wherever you're trying to go with Monique and Janine? And I think that is a hard thing, I think, to kind of quantify for MM. Is like, it's almost like temporary satisfaction, or do I want Monique and Janine to kind of live past that? Do I want this threat not to loom over our lives anymore? And I think that makes also a lot of sense. It's like, yeah, we kind of got to finish the story that we started. I'm too deep into this thing. Maybe if he wasn't so I guess present in all of the things the boys has done versus Vought and all these everybody else, this wouldn't be the case. But because he's kind of too deep into this thing to kind of leave now, because now they're still going to be in trouble even if they leave. So yeah, I think again, what a conundrum, but at the end of it, it kind of also does make sense. I think with what's decided, man. But yeah, what a conundrum to be in. But yeah, I think I get everything that kind of went down.
Man, it was tough, because he also invokes his family and his father and his grandfather, who also just spent their entire lives fighting against Vought and fighting against the idea of soups, and ultimately it killed him. And now he's been on the brink of death a lot. Most recently, probably the most serious it's been, and he's gotten an opportunity to walk away from it all and to be selfish just for once, and to have the thing that he's wanted his entire life, and to have this family with the two people that he loves the most. And you want him so desperately to just like take that moment for himself. It's like, yeah, just go, bro. Like you've done more than enough. You've gone above and beyond the
For
Call
sure.
of Duty. But, you know, at the same time, is what A-Train conveys to him, like, this is going to follow you. You think that just because you go away to a different country, that all of a sudden it's just over and that somebody won't come and find you, which is probably accurate because there's been just so much done from MM and the boys that I don't think they'll ever be able to live it down. Pretty much one has to eradicate the other for it to truly be over. But it's really tough because, you know what MM has been through and, you know, just like what he's gone through and how much he's had to sacrifice, first and foremost, his family. And to have that moment right in front of him and to still make the choice to say, like, I got to finish the fight, really just calling back to who he is and also who his father and grandfather were to him and what he saw them do. It's pretty profound. It's pretty profound stuff. I'm actually glad that they took it that way and they presented us with this dynamic of will he, won't he? But ultimately we see that he has to stick around. And we'll come back to A-Train's conundrum in a second here, but I want to talk about the Deep in this episode, specifically him and his romantic partner, the octopus Ambrosius. And you know what? I was today years old when I found out that this damn octopus is voiced by Tilda Swinton. I don't think I knew that. I'm not sure if that's something that I knew, or maybe I knew and forgot from last season, but I just don't remember knowing that Tilda Swinton voices damn octopus. Makes a lot of sense. It sounds just like her.
It sounds just like her.
But it's a pretty violent end to their relationship. She's jealous. She's not getting enough time with him. He's obviously having this affair with Sage, you know, that's, you know, treating him in a different type of way. And before long, we see him kill Ambrosius. Like, there's this whole death scene where they're arguing. It gets very tense and violent. He puts her back in the closet in her fish tank. They're still going back and forth because she's like, yeah, I know about Sage. She can't love you like I do. I mean, classic stuff, classic relationship stuff. And she wants so desperately to just be with him. She just wants him to come home and to have this love with her. And he's just not having it. He's not here for it because he thinks the Sage can please him in ways that she can't. And he gets angry. He loses his temper. He smashes her fish tank, closes the door. She suffocates to death. It's a really long death scene. It's honestly kind of humorous, kind of funny, but it's the end of those two. It's actually quite crazy and quite shocking. I just didn't see this coming. But what do you make of just like this coming to an end, like this long-standing aquatic love that I guess the Deep has had? It's reached a violent end and a violent conclusion for him.
Yeah, I think this whole scene is, of course, it was kind of comedic, but also kind of dark as well. It was like, whoa, like you could literally hear her screaming, like, Kevin, Kevin. She's like, it's so funny that she uses his real name because all we really hear from anybody else is the Deep. She's like the only person I feel like that really calls him Kevin. You're like, Kevin. But yeah, I think this signals like the Deep has gone off the deep end. I know it sounds so corny and crazy. That was really bad, but I think this is really legit. Like the last of this is, he has now abandoned any morals he had left. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like the Deep, one of the things is he's always cared for fish. That's who he is, right? Like the Deep is supposed to be this aquatic guy. And now the way he kills her and literally dries her out, like from having water or anything, I'm like, maybe this is literally he's not coming back. You know what I'm saying? We talked about that Wrath of the God thing. We talked about he literally right after this is like, I will kill every fish in the sea for you, Homelander. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe we have officially lost the Deep, man. But yeah, what a crazy scene. It's not surprising for all the Ambrosius stuff we got up until this point. Is like, this dude is nuts. This dude is wild. But yeah, man, I think this really is just kind of to tell us like the Deep will now kind of do anything. Like he's kind of off the hinges at this point. Because again, there has always been a small, the Deep did something nice today. Of course, he did something fucking ridiculous the next week, but he did something nice today. And now maybe that's just not the case anymore. I think a lot of that niceness that he had might be gone. But yeah, what a weird scene, man.
True fuckboy behavior. He's delusional. He's ridiculous. The fact that he did this is kind of crazy. It's even more crazy because before he kills her, she tells him Sage doesn't love you like I do, and she's only using you for her own pleasure. And then we find out mere scenes later that Sage is also sleeping with Black Noir. Like that was also unintentionally revealed because they have a funny exchange in the hallway, and Deep's like, you don't want me to come and lobotomize you again, and Black Noir's like, what do you mean lobotomize herself? Like, what are you talking about? and it just goes to show, like, yeah, man, she don't actually care for you. This is just a sex thing for her. It's just pleasure, and so now you've like lost somebody who actually cared about you and loved you. As silly as it may be, like, it is an octopus, and this is like a whole, human soup thing with an aquatic animal. It's silly on the surface, but it actually kind of does work. It's one of those things where it's like, this is a rare thing that actually in the context of this show and what they've been doing works. But it was a great final scene for Ambrosia's. It was dark, but I did find it to be funny because she had a very slow, dramatic death, and she was just like calling him and calling him and calling him, and he didn't know what to do, but he clearly just wanted to let her die at that point, and it was kind of crazy. But he's all the way gone. It's over for him, which I think they only punctuated later in this episode, where we see him and A-Train completely on opposite sides. But continuing on with the Deep and Black Noir, eventually, the Deep is like, yeah, I'll do whatever you need, Homelander. Like, I fully buy into who you are, and I'm fully buying into this whole thing. And Homelander sends the Deep and sends Black Noir to the boys' headquarters to kill them. He's just like, you know what? You got to go take them out. And they start a fight with Butcher and Annie at the headquarters, and ultimately A-Train gets involved. shows up. It's a big throwdown within the quarters of the boys. What did you think about this fight choreography, the big action set piece in the middle of the episode?
I liked it, man, because it was so like, damn, finally we got some confrontation with the boys and a little bit of the seven, man. And it's funny that it's the Deep in Black Noir. It made so much sense to me. And I was like, I wonder what all is going to transpire with this battle with this specific Black Noir. I was very curious. I was like, what are they going to do with this dude? Like, is he going to talk? Which he ended up talking. She said, wait a second, did he talk? I thought that was funny. But then he ends up flying? I was like, whoa, wait a second. Who is it? This dude is pretty fucking powerful. You got a powerful soup over here. You know what I'm saying? Like, this dude is way different than the Black Noir that we had before. And I think, to a surprise of a lot of people, this dude is maybe even stronger than the last Black Noir that we had. Just maybe not as mentally fucked up, seeing Barnhouse critters or whatever they're called, all those little guys or whatever, man. But I liked it, man. I was glad to see everything they did. They pull out this big ass machine gun that ends up using at the end of it all to shoot Black Noir out of the side of the building. I was like, whoa, what's going on there? Annie literally stabs the Deep, like, tries to aim for his gills almost, kind of. I was like, oh my God, they're going for it. But I love the side of Annie too, though, man. I told you, I just be wanting her to whip ass. I ain't gonna lie to you, because she has been Starlight for so long. It's just like, yeah, get nitty gritty, Annie. Get angry, whoop some ass. You're a soup too. I want her to fit in, along with all the with the boys, man, and just kind of be brutal in that way. And I think she showed it in that scene as well. But yeah, I liked it. I thought it was a good fight. I love how it was contained. They really didn't go outside the room. You know what I'm saying? They were just in the room. Noir gets hit outside the room. I was like, yes, a good contained battle. So yeah, I liked it, man. I was pretty impressed.
They got to it. The shit was great. I thought the action was pretty great in all regards. The choreography, the moments of seeing Black Noir fly and Annie doing what she was doing. It was all good stuff. But they really should have killed the Deep. Like, they had a chance. They should have off that guy immediately. It would have been totally warranted after what he just did to his love, his Ambrosias. And he's one of those guys where it's like, hey, we have a soup vulnerable here. Let's go ahead and fucking just do him. Let's end this whole thing. And they just chose not to. And I'm just like, y'all should have done that. Y'all really should have done that. Because now what's happened is that, him and Black Noir, they go back and basically, because A-Train showed up on behalf of the boys, they reveal A-Train's been the leak this whole time. And I do want to talk about him because he has an interesting sort of journey in this episode where we first see him trying to convince MM to stay and finish the fight. Like, don't go to Belize. It's not gonna be over there. But we also see A-Train trying to like figure out how to leave as well, because once it's revealed that he's the mole, he's like, I'm on borrowed time. They found out Homelander's gonna probably find me and just completely obliterate me. I have to get out of here. And he's having this interaction in this moment with Ashley, who also desperately wants to leave. She's been just so oppressed under the control of the boy, or not the boys, but the seven and Vought. She's obviously sad about who she used to be to who she's become. And she talks about how easy it is to become a monster in that place, but A-Train's not able to convince her to leave. She just can't bring herself to do it. What do you make of just A-Train's journey in this episode? Now finally just being completely revealed to be the mole and having this, I think, somewhat of a complete arc, to finally finding the courage to just get the fuck out of Dodge and to just leave this whole life behind.
Yeah, at some point, I think you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, man. I think, of course, A Train has done a lot of terrible shit, a lot of bad shit. But we talked about it last week where he finally, I think, had the moment that made him feel like a superhero. In I think in the true sense of, any real superhero that we have, any of the best superheroes, they're willing, I think, to die for their cause, right? They're going to do their best they can not to, but I think they're willing to die for their cause. And I think there does come a time where A-Train is like, I'm kind of sick and tired of running. You know what I mean? And there is another side to it where it's like, if a lot of the boys have been alive for this long, you know what I'm saying? And if I become a boy, maybe I don't die. Maybe as I don't die as fast as long as I'm with them and under their protection as well, because now I have kind of earned their trust. You know what I mean? So maybe I can kind of stick with them and kind of try this real superhero thing out. I think he's finally feel like he's no longer in the clutch of Homelander in that way. He found his path potentially to the good side. So again, man, he still got a lot to make up for. Still not a great person, but I think him going in the right direction does say a lot about what, just his character arc and what he's been through, because it's been a lot up until this point. So yeah, I'm glad to see him here. I can't wait to see what happens. I don't know. Your prediction still might cut. He might die next episode. You know what I'm saying? We may be A-Train no more. Maybe maybe the Deep is gone next episode. I think, you know what I'm saying? We don't know, but I think regardless of what happens, both of those characters in particular have had very full character arcs that we've seen. One went to the darkness. The Deep, I think, is done. That boy is way off the hinges, and I think A-Train has kind of almost had the opposite kind of trajectory. So I'm curious to see, what happens with A-Train next episode, man. Now, especially that Homelander knows that he's the leak. I really want to know what's going to happen next.
And Homelander was crying. He was like, "Yo, this is real betrayal. What the fuck, A-Train?" He was so people? Hurt. He was really hurt by that. That kind of surprised me. I'm like, damn, he has a soft spot for the black guy. But it makes all the sense in the world that it ended up here. I low-key thought he was going to die at the end of this episode. They were kind of setting it up that way.
I was like, oh no,
that this is going to be like a big, explosive finale of the penultimate episode. If he is going to die, I don't know if that's going to be the case. And, maybe it should have happened here as opposed to next week. But, still don't know if that's going to be the case or not. But, yeah, man, it's crazy to see A-Train sort of come this far from where we first saw him as. But he's always been on the fence. He's just always kind of felt guilty about so many things, and the moment last week where he saw the boy after he dropped off at the hospital, it obviously spoke a lot to who he wants to be and how he wants to live his life. But of course, Homelander, again, he's just pissed. He's pissed at everybody. Things are falling apart. Nothing's working. And he's sick and tired of Sage, this person that he brought on to try to be his aide, to be the smartest person on the universe, in the universe, to really help him with his plan of eradication of humans. Now he's just like, I can't do this anymore, because she knew he was the leak. She knew that A-Train was the leak and didn't really do anything about it. And she tried to like misinform the boys and had this larger plan at play that didn't necessarily immediately go the way that that they planned out. But he's just over it. And he's just like, leave, you're done, it's over. Because he also has Firecracker on his side now. And so we see that this relationship that started off earlier in the season is now kaput, at least for now. What did you think about this? Do you think Sage pops up next week as well? And ultimately, how will this affect Homelander and his plans, not having somebody who was such an advantage to, I think, what he was ultimately trying to do, no longer be by his side at this point?
I definitely think Sage comes back in some capacity. I just don't know what it looks like yet. I think that's the thing I'm still kind of wrestling with and trying to figure out. I think there's no way you bring in a character like her, the smartest person, like in this whole thing in the world, and then she just like disappears like that after being fired. She's got a taste of what that power feels like and looks like, being able to control, I think, a certain amount of people. And now I think she's going to chase that even more, probably through a different avenue that's not Homelander. He might even feel some type of way about Homelander firing her. Maybe because again, there were reasons. She's so smart, bro. There were reasons, of course, she didn't tell Homelander about A-Train, right? She kind of was like, oh, A-Train has feed him misinformation. I wanted him to do that, but I still think there's more to it. I still think there are things that she didn't want Homelander to know for her own agenda, and I think she might continue that own agenda even after being fired. So I definitely think Sage is coming back. Man, Homelander being sad about A-Train is still crazy. It's just like, what? I can't believe you're really sad about this. But I think, man, I don't know, man. I think he's just losing people left and right. I mean, there's no longer any black people on the side. We know that he lost 2 black people pretty much in one episode. So I'm curious to know even what that looks like. Usually, you have marketing people there, like, y'all, we got to get a new black person on the 7. They're all gone. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nobody really left in this thing. He gonna get Ashley back? I doubt it. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I really wonder. I think from a business perspective, what Homelander in. There's no longer any business anymore, you know. So yeah, it's like we've completely lost those pieces. So I wonder what Homelander is going to do to. I feel like now it's time for him to kind of make kind of a statement with something, and I think that's what next episode is going to be. Homelander, you lost Sage, you lost A-Train. What the hell are you going to do? And I think it's about to get real bloody real fast. I don't know what it looks like, but I know it's going to be something insane.
Well, I think it's an internal question that he has to ask himself. Does he really want the smartest people around him to advance his plans, or does he want people that he can walk over and control? And that's been the dichotomy between the people that have been sort of inserted into the 7 and Vought this entire series, because he's expressed wanting help and wanting to use somebody who is supposed to be smarter than him to advance his plan, but he's not necessarily allowing it to come to fruition in the ways that she probably sees before he can even see it. He's only looking at it from a surface level perspective because he saw what happened at the mansion. He's like, you were off your game and you allowed A-Train to continue to maneuver and operate within the company knowing he was the leak. Well, she insinuates that she does know more and that there's something bigger at play. I will say, for me as a viewer, if she doesn't come back next week, this will be a big wasted opportunity for her character because I'm still not convinced that we have seen the full capabilities of what the smartest person on the planet is supposed to be. Right. Sage is a decent character, but she's not lived up to what I thought she was going to be in the show. Yeah. And next week is an opportunity to where we could see that. Like, if there is a grander thing that's happening here, and I hope that that's the case, then maybe that can give us insight into what her plan is and ultimately how truly diabolical she can be herself. But so far, we've only had a couple of plans, a couple of missions, a few moments of her lobotomizing herself and reducing herself down to a 3-year-old. Like, that doesn't really speak to you being the smartest person on the planet, and I think that could definitely be somewhat of a wasted opportunity. But there could be something there, because before she leaves, she's like, surround yourself with people that you can systematically eliminate, but there's one person you'll never, ever beat. And she drops down a cartoon drawing of Maeve in front of Homelander. We've not seen Maeve this entire season at all. We know her whereabouts. She has pretty much left the entire country. What do you think that means? What do you think Sage is insinuating with that particular comment? Are we gearing up for a potential Maeve comeback in the next episode? Is she working alongside Maeve? What do you think that might point to?
Yeah, I don't know. Part of me thought it was just like an Easter egg. Like, y'all know Maeve is still out there, right? You know what I mean? And maybe that would be crazy if she was working with Maeve, though. And part of me doesn't see it, just because how forward she was about talking to Homelander and I guess being on his side. Part of me feels like she was genuine in some of that, like wanting to work with him stuff. But if she is, like you said, the mastermind, I'm hoping. Because I'm with you. I've been hoping Sage was like Ozymandias. You know what I'm saying? Like, I needed her on like some, we done moved 30 chess pieces and now here's the plan by the time I moved the 29th. You know what I'm saying? And so I have been looking for some of that. And I think some of that is still coming. But yeah, I just know Maeve is coming back. I just don't know. Yeah, I just don't know what it looks like yet. But I also don't know if she's working with her either. Maybe she's about to. Maybe she's on her way. Maybe that's next episode. She pulls up on her like, hey, I have something to talk to you about. Like, we can do something here if you ever still wanted to get revenge on this person. But yeah, or even maybe there's something even more genius where there's something political about, hey, everybody, Maeve is still alive. What does that look like? You know what I mean? Because that's how Sage has to play. Sage kind of has to play the more political game against Homelander. You know what I'm saying? She can't just go whip his ass. But maybe something like that leads into a bigger plan that she has. But yeah, I don't know what it looks like yet, but I'm excited to see. They got to have something.
I would surmise that if there's a Maeve collaboration at play, Sage did this as a contingency plan, knowing how volatile Homelander is, knowing that the potential to be let go and to be fired was on the table, because the smartest person in the world would think that far ahead. They would think like, this might not work out. He might get volatile. He might get grumpy and try to, end me. So I'll have a backup plan. I'll have a contingency. Maeve is the only person who knows what the fuck Homelander did to that plane of people all the way back at the season premiere of season 1. Like, she has that information. She knows so much about him. And defeat, I don't think necessarily is a physical sort of allusion to the fact that he can't defeat her, but he can't defeat Maeve in the sense that Maeve probably has the most shit on Homelander more than anybody, that can always come back to bite him in the ass and really affect his positioning and his public perception, all these things at play. So perhaps there's a collaboration there, and perhaps that's how we get Maeve back in the fold, but we'll have to see. Also, just quickly want to talk about Kimiko and Frenchie. We found out exactly why Kimiko doesn't speak in this episode, which, she pretty much had not been all the way truthful with Frenchie about what the reason is. But, when she was in the Liberation Army, essentially they made the soldiers fight each other. And essentially, if you were to cry out in a loss or cry out in a fight, that would mean your death. And we saw that Kimiko was very, very cerebral, pretty much good at her job, and she was able to murder without making a sound at all. And then they told her, like, well, you're allowed to speak now, but she said that she couldn't. Basically having to look in the mirror to really understand, who she had become. She had become this really well-trained assassin with a very dark side to her. And also, Frenchie himself is now sort of back in the fold as well. Mallory was able to, I guess, pull some strings to get him out of prison after he turned himself in. Any thoughts on just like that brief moment that they share with each other, just like having that conversation and Kimiko ultimately sort of opening up to him and revealing, sort of this information that we hadn't necessarily known up until this point?
Yeah, it was one of those things. I think we had been questioning the whole episode or the whole season. It's one of those plot lines that never really came, I think, full circle for me. Like, what is up with Kimiko and this girl? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's going on? We do get answers in slow motion, but even still, after that scene, I'm still like, okay, but what else? Like, where does she, like, what's up with her? I don't know. I just thought there would be more there and more to discuss a little bit. But the whole reveal again of the way of why she can't speak is so interesting, because in my mind I'm like, so you can but can't, like, like the whole time we're thinking her vocal cords don't work, like she really can't say anything. But now the way she talks about it, I'm like, you telling me you can't speak because of trauma? You know what I'm saying? Like, trauma is kind of holding you back from talking, and it makes you a little mad, because it's like, okay, so is something going to happen soon for you to say a word? And what does that mean? Are you going to get over all of this and be like, hey guys, I'm Kimiko? You know what I'm saying? Like, what does that look like? Or is it really a thing where you're never going to be able to speak because you haven't spoken? Like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that in particular. It felt like a weird plot point to me. I'm still not completely sold about the way they tried to convey that whole thing. But again, I am happy at least they addressed some of that trauma she did have that they brought up. Again, that whole storyline doesn't work for me, but at least it was something, I guess, for them to talk about, especially because I think it was important for Frenchie to hear from Kimiko of like, no, I kind of experienced this thing too. Like, I kind of fucked this girl's life up, just like you fucked old boy's life up. Like, that part was important to me. That's what I wanted to hear, of like why they're related in that way. I thought that was the more important piece of that whole thing. But yeah, some of the other stuff, I'm not so sure about how I feel about it.
I think that they've definitely dropped the ball this season with Kimiko and Frenchie as characters. It just hasn't come together in the ways that I thought it would. I think last season, they both really stood out with their particular stories, but this season things just felt really haphazard. I mean, on the Frenchie side of things, like, I just don't get why we would go through the entire scene of him turning himself in for murders only for him to be released from prison like 2 episodes later, just that easily, just that quickly. It just doesn't, that just doesn't feel right to me, because when I saw him walk in at the beginning of the episode, I'm like, well, it's just that easy? Like, you can murder all these people, turn yourself in, and we just need Mallory to come in and just save the day? Like, where are the real stakes to that? And when we didn't see him last episode, I'm like, oh, that's intriguing because like he's dealing with these demons internally, and we're seeing him try to wrestle with that stuff. But now he's just back out, and Kimiko same way. They don't do a ton of stuff to like really lead up to this reveal, and it's also like somewhat questionable behind the motivations of like why she's so silent and why she doesn't speak. And so these feel like some dropped balls on the part of these characters, unfortunately, because I do enjoy them both so much. But I just think that I don't know. They've been kind of spinning their wheels. It felt like they didn't really have enough material for them. And so we've kind of had to drag out, the story in this way between these two, in particular, and ultimately like the reveals, the conclusions to where we're reaching doesn't quite fill up to par, I think, compared to what the other stories are giving us. The big sort of ending of this episode involves Annie and Huey and a third person, a shapeshifter. We saw the shapeshifter earlier in the episode. Annie and Huey, they break into an apartment to try to find documents about this plan for Homelander and company to crash President-elect Singer's rally in D.C., which is clearly going to be the next episode. It's going to be, I think, certainly parallel to the January 6th attacks we experienced in our own reality. But in the midst of that, there's a shapeshifter in the apartment, and we don't see the shapeshifter again for the entire episode. It kind of feels like just a nothing thing that happens. But then by the end of it, Annie and Huey, Annie seemingly they're at home and they have some sex. They get down to it. There's been a lot going on. They connect romantically. She's putting on the suit, living out this fantasy that he's probably had for a while. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we're doing that. But ultimately, it's a ploy. It's actually the shapeshifter. Annie has been abducted. She's kidnapped somewhere in a cellar. She's locked up, and it's really the shapeshifter who has basically infiltrated their home to get these documents, out of their safe in their closet. And so this kind of leaves us on a cliffhanger for next week and ultimately, what that's going to entail and what that's going to mean. But first of all, did this reveal work for you? Because it is, I think, somewhat of a surprise because they do eliminate the shapeshifter for a while in the episode. You forget about her until she comes back at the end here. And ultimately, what are the implications, for what happened in this sort of final sequence of events that happened?
Yeah, first the shapeshifter, that whole scene is nuts. I thought that scene was crazy. I was like, I don't know. It's one of those scenes where you see somebody running and they just start ripping themselves apart. To be honest, at first I didn't know what was going down. I didn't know what was happening.
Gross.
But that whole chase scene is nasty, but a kind of a really cool scene. It's one of those ones you're like, oh my God, that's nasty, but you can't look away because how crazy it is. Living skin on the ground. Huey like slipped on some of the skin that was on the steps. I was like, what is happening? It was a very crazy scene. And then, man, that whole sex scene, it's so interesting because it did surprise me, the reveal that it was a shapeshifter. But even before that, I had a thought that usually when Annie and Huey are getting it on and she like climaxes, her eyes glow. That was like a whole thing. I remember that being like a whole plot point. I was like, don't her eyes glow? But I kind of I let it go though in the moment. I was like, maybe it's just they didn't want to do it in this. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they didn't want to do it at this time. And then the way she smiles at him in the bed as they're laying there, I was like, okay, something's not right here because like this just doesn't feel like Annie anymore.
It's weird, yeah.
And then you find out it's so weird. I was like, why is she looking at him like that? And then and then you find out it's the shapeshifter, and it's like, oh, that's what's happening here. And so that was surprising. What was even scarier is just the cut to Annie and her being locked up. That was like, it was something about that felt even more ominous because they easily could have put her just still at the bar. You know what I'm saying? She could have just still been at the bar with Butcher. You know what I'm saying? They could have made it so the time was like that. I was like, oh, okay, maybe he did infiltrate. Maybe Annie's still okay. But it turns to find out this girl done got kidnapped and is locked up. Can't use her powers. Strapped to the handcuffs. Strapped to the ground. It's just what a dire and crazy situation to be in. And one of the first things I did think of also was like, how the hell are they going to find this girl? You know what I'm saying? Like she ain't got no tracker, like the 7 have trackers. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. You know what I'm saying? And I think that did make me excited to see the next episode because on top of, like you said, the whole rally or the presidential, thing going down next episode that's going to happen, they got to figure out where the fuck the real Annie is and how that comes to light and how we even find out she's missing in the first place. So yeah, what a crazy end to the episode. I actually thought it was a really good cliffhanger to leave off because it left so many questions for me about both the shapeshifter and the safety of Annie, man. So yeah, I thought it was pretty effective for me.
Yeah, I think it was okay. I think I still have some PTSD from Secret Invasion and how much they fumbled that, like the shapeshifter idea. Yeah. And when I saw it, I mean, initially I was shocked. I was like, oh shit, that's crazy. But then I thought, I was like, oh, but that just feels, I don't know, man. The whole shapeshifting shit has just been so downgraded to me over the past few years to the fault of Marvel. That is not on The Boys and in Prime Video at all. Like, Marvel has really torpedoed that whole idea for me. But obviously this is a parody and having parallels with a lot of the mainstream comic book stuff that we talk about. And when I saw it, I was just like, ah, man. Now, on the positive side of it, I don't anticipate that this is going to be a long-standing main plot line of any of this. Like, it was just really kind of a device to set up the fact that Annie is kidnapped, and pretty effective in that way. As a cliffhanger for your penultimate episode, again, doesn't feel like the biggest thing that we can do. It's like, yeah, it's shocking, and yeah, that's pretty crazy, but like, Annie's still a soup. She's gonna find a way out. Like, it can't be that hard. It can't be that difficult for her. I mean, it's still fantasy at the end of the day. So it didn't feel like the most consequential thing that could have happened. I could be proven wrong next week. Like, maybe she doesn't get out and she's just like chained up forever. Like, that could very much be a possibility, which would be risky, but they could go that route. But it just didn't feel like the biggest thing you could really just like drop on us before we get to that final episode. I was just like, okay, well, all right, she'll get out eventually. But we'll see next week. Any closing thoughts? Any final things you want to mention before we move on?
I don't think so. This is a very straightforward episode, and we are spending more time, I think, as a unit. You know, we've kind of talked about some of those worries with just being together as a cast, especially because some of the side things weren't working as well, particularly with Frenchie and Kimiko, and some of the other stuff wasn't working as well. I think I'm finally glad, like, this episode at least does feel like next episode we have to be together. Like, it's like, oh, we don't have a choice. We gotta come in and do this mission together. And I think I'm excited for that. I'm excited that we don't have to be doing all these separate adventures. I'm excited to just kind of be the boys versus the 7 or whatever they are now. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. But yeah, pretty straightforward episode.
Last thing I'll just quickly say is about Butcher. It feels like he's also recognized, like, hey, yo, an airborne virus that kills all of them? I don't want that. Like, we can't go that far. But
kind of crazy.
I'm also wondering, like, is that going to stand? Because I don't know, man. It feels like Butcher's still on a very dark path and very much heading towards, like, darker thoughts and darker places in terms of what he's willing to do to win this fight. Is it going to be that easy to where he just thinks, like, yeah, you know, mass genocide is wrong? I don't know. Butcher feels a little bit more complicated than that. What's going to happen to him that makes him say, you know what? Fuck all that. We're killing everybody. It doesn't matter who gets it. Launch the virus. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but again, it just feels a little too easy that he's just all of a sudden so willing to sort of let it go and to just try to figure out a way around. But of course, like the whole plot line with like Kimiko losing her leg and then them developing the virus that can just only be injected in Homelander is still kind of at play there. But yeah, I'm curious to see where he goes. But we'll certainly see in next week's finale. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on episode 7 of season 4 of The Boys. If you checked out the latest episode, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.